Well, Todd Sarner, welcome to the Personal Success Podcast. Thanks for spending the morning with me.
I'm happy to be here, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me on.
So, who is Todd Sarner and what does he care about?
I think I might talk about myself in the third person for Who is Todd Sarner?
Yeah.
I'm a psychotherapist and parenting coach. That's my professional, the two different hats I wear professionally. I'm a dad, I'm a partner, my professional path really came from early on deciding that I wanted to help kids, mostly because of going to a therapist myself when my parents split up and they had kind of an acrimonial divorce. And I guess a family court judge decided me and my brother and my sister should all go to therapy for a few times to make sure we were okay. I was 13 years old. I was the oldest. And I just loved it. And there was just something about it. I didn't feel I had a place to talk and be listened to and say what was going on in my world. So from that, I just decided I wanted to help kids. But then fast forward, after working in group homes, after working with foster and adoptive kids, after working on wearing a lot of different hats with kids, I became a dad myself about 20 years ago. And I became mentored by a guy named Gordon Neufeld, wrote a book called Hold On to Your Kids, clinical and developmental psychologist up in Canada, brilliant man. And between those two things, it came to me, there's a place for people to directly help kids and God bless them. But I decided I wanted to help the parents, and so it just became a passion of mine to help kids by helping the parents. And so on one hand, I do parent coaching, and I have a process I developed over the years. It takes about 3 months that I work with parents on getting them on the same page and helping them understand child development and behavior. And then the other hat I wear is couples counseling, and I only speak to parents. Both pathways are designed to help kids have a better experience. Not a perfect experience, that doesn't exist, but maybe a better experience. And everything is focused on helping kids to reach their fullest potential.
There's a quote that struck me on your website, and that was, when I became a father and realized everything I thought I knew about helping families was incomplete. I wonder what it was that you found there.
I went to a graduate school that I loved called the California Institute of Integral Studies. Not everybody's heard of it. It's a small graduate school in San Francisco. It really has an east-west approach that considers a lot about personal, spiritual experience as part of our human experience and psychological experience. I had great professors and I had experience working with kids. And I went to developmental class, for instance, Professor Kubler, brilliant man from England. And I learned a whole bunch of different things about child development. And I had some experiences, but I had a master's degree in counseling when my son was born. His mother had a master's degree in counseling when he was born. We both had experience working with kids, and we were both like, what the hell are we doing? We have no idea what we're doing. Everybody jokes about not having a manual or whatever, but I had a couple $100,000 into learning about this stuff, right? I mean, not to make the money the only thing, but it was expensive getting the degrees and trainings and practicums and loans. And I had no idea, a cohesive approach, a cohesive narrative about how to raise a kid. I had a whole bunch of different pieces of experiences. And I hope I'm answering your question, Ryan, but the glue for me, the missing piece for me, as obvious as it sounds, was attachment theory and attachment science as articulated by my mentor, Gordon Neufeld, who I mentioned. I read his book, Hold On to Your Kids, when my son was maybe a year old. It was only available in Canada at the time. It was extremely expensive. My son's mom was like, we have to get this book. I'm like, I already have 15 books that you told me I have to read. And we got this one, and it was just light bulb moment after light bulb moment after light bulb moment. Again, as simple as this is, his whole thesis, his whole approach was, attachment is key. The relationship between you and your child or you and your partner is key. And it's when that isn't in the right place, when we take it for granted, when we assume it's there, when we just think, oh, we're okay. When we don't take the time to get connected first, nothing else works. And that goes for day to day. If I haven't taken the time to get in my child's face in a friendly way and just connect first when I get home, But that's also over time. Is the relationship in a good place? Am I taking it for granted? And that way of looking at attachment, that both one, attachment is what opens the gateways to everything else. The feeling in the moment, you have very young kids, like they will look at you when you walk in the room and they will scan your face a little bit to make sure you're coming in peace. I'm joking a little bit, but they will look at your eyes, they'll see, right? But also young children, if they're focused on something, that's all they're focused on. They don't have a sense of connection to you when they're focused on something else. And so if you just walk into a room with a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and you just start telling them what to do, you'll either get them ignoring you, but the truth is they actually can't even hear you, or they'll have an instinct not to listen to you. So one, attachment was the glue. It was the missing piece. The understanding that we can't take that for granted and it's a difficult thing and it takes some work. But also that parents are meant to be in the alpha position. And sometimes that's misunderstood. We think of alpha males in the executive boardroom or whatever as a certain stereotype. But alpha, as articulated by Dr. Neufeld, is you are meant to stay in the leadership position. The mama bear, the papa bear, the I'm here to take care of you. And my choices are not primarily, hey, child, what would make you happy in this moment? Because that wouldn't be taking care of them. The number one thing is that I am here to take care of you. I'm going to make a choice that is based on what would be best for you in the moment. And if you want cookies for dinner and you're yelling and screaming, it's the only thing that you're going to eat. I could make you happy by giving in and giving you cookies, but my job is to make sure your belly's full of a healthy meal. Does that all make sense, Ryan? It's a big answer.
Yeah, it makes.
But it was like. Did you see that movie, Usual Suspects? And at the end of the movie, Kevin Spacey realizes that the criminal who was sitting in front of him was making up a story the whole time, and he's putting it all together. You know, like there's things on the board behind him. Sorry for the bizarre reference. And it's a negative reference in a way, because it was like he figured out that this guy was. But to me, reading Hold On to Your Kids and being introduced to this developmental attachment paradigm was the thing that made me go, oh, that, and like put everything together. And I think too often these days, parents are doing reactive parenting, what to do when your child does something to make them stop it, or they're doing this incomplete one size fits all parenting based on the latest thing they heard on social media. And I think we have to have a comprehensive narrative about what our job is and what our role is.
Well, I think that quote and what you just shared there is really resonant to me. And I think you helped me put words to my experience, because I guess the short version of my story, Todd, is I was the oldest of 6 kids. And so I walked around for 20 years saying, hi, I'm Ryan. I'll never have kids, because it was Ryan, run your brother to soccer practice, right? Do this, take, and I was like, okay, I've done that. I want to focus on me now. And, it sounds so cliched, but as soon as those boys were born, like literally I was like, what did I think was important before this? Right. And so I was lucky enough, because I was older, I was able to spend, those first couple of months, like with them every day, all the time. And, if I had to say what is the most valuable thing in my life, probably my attachment with them. And I'm thinking of
and
this.
It's definitely the most important thing for them. It's everything. Yeah.
My partner paid to me, and I thought of this while you were speaking just a minute ago. She paid me a great compliment, which I need to make sure to note with her, is she got home from work the other day, and I was sitting there and they went and gave mom a hug or whatever. Then they were sort of climbing all over me and was like, Daddy, fill my cup and all this stuff. And she's like, what this means, right? She's like, that there is like not really a primary parent. Like they don't, it's not when mommy comes home, they all of a sudden she's like, that's good. That means that we're doing good. And I was just like,
awesome.
Oh, okay. Realize when you said that, how much that means to me. So anyway, just a moment of reflection there.
It's everything. I get choked up a little bit just thinking about it. Like, that's everything. And the thing is, at that age, they can be singularly focused in any given moment. So it could give the illusion sometimes that they have a primary parent, and sometimes they do lean a little bit more towards a parent when they're younger, especially mommy, because mommy is mommy, and mommy maybe breastfed, and mommy, they came out of mommy's body. And so there's in most cases. But yeah, they do get singularly focused because they haven't developed their frontal lobe. They can only focus on one thing at a time. But yeah, naturally, when we're doing it right and it's flowing, it's like that's how it's meant to be. It's
Yeah.
balanced, and dads are so important. And I'll tell you, man, like I went through graduate school and read very few things about dads,
Yeah.
like they weren't doing, D.W. Winnicott had his famous quote, and I loved Winnicott. He's brilliant. But he said, kids don't need a perfect mother. They just need a good enough mother. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's wonderful. Please take the pressure off being perfect. But what about dads?
Yeah.
He wasn't mentioning dads, but we're just so important to our kids. And, yeah, that makes me smile thinking about that and makes me have a lot of memories about those days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just is, I think I sort of just was like, oh yeah, that's, I see what you're kind of talking about there. But now I'm thinking of that. Well, that's a heck of a compliment. So,
Yeah.
Todd, you talk about transformative parenting, and I wonder, what does that really mean to you, and how is it different from sort of a traditional parenting advice, or, just managing the child's behavior?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers of that. I'll say I've regretted the name sometimes, especially when I have to go type out or spell out my email address to people.
Yeah.
Transformative parenting,
It's a lot. Yeah.
Honestly, where it came from was this very idealistic place and what the mission was from the beginning. And I swear I did not know the quote by Marianne Williamson that I'll bring up here in a second when I made up the name. But the idea for me is there's a lot of pathways to growth and transformation and maybe success, in life. And I believe that being a parent is one of those pathways. That it's not all about us. It's about them. But, I was enamored with the hero's journey when I was a teenager and in my I read a lot of Joseph Campbell and Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I just love these stories that were told by every culture. Everywhere around the world in history had the same stories about, we think of Star Wars or Lord of the Rings being hero's journeys. My personal favorite, Princess Bride,
Yeah.
is a hero's journey. And I can quote that entire movie. But the idea that the hero is like this, like not obvious person, and the hero has a lot of difficulties ahead of him and it looks impossible. But by finding the right guide and by finding the right friends and support and by facing your fears and being courageous, that the prize is everything, right? Like, and so save the universe in Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, get the love of Princess Buttercup in Princess Bride. But to me, that was always a story about personal transformation, about how we all can feel too small, or we can all feel not enough, or we could all feel like I don't have what it takes for this thing, or I'm damaged and I would never have kids for different reasons. I've heard that a lot for different reasons. But that faced with this call to adventure and maybe finding the right guides and with your own courage, that parenting is like a pathway to transformation and growth and maybe healing things in ourselves that we didn't heal, that were still there. Because everybody knows if you get married or you have a long-term partnership or you have kids or all of the above, it is gonna bring out everything in you that you don't know, that you can't do, that you never learned, that people didn't give to you. And there's danger in that, and there's opportunity in that, right? Does this all track so far,
Yeah.
Ryan? And
Yeah.
so
100%.
that was the idea, is I think we're here to grow. I think we're here to learn. I think a lot of us can point to a lot of things growing up and say, I didn't have this, or I didn't see that. And I don't know if I would be a good parent, or I never quite learned how to do this thing. And it's coming up with my partner right now, or it's coming up with my kids. But facing that and figuring it out, I think one of the most transformative pathways that there is for growth. Now, it's not for everybody. Not everybody has to have a kid. That's not what I'm saying, or have kids. But if that's your choice and that's your path, I think maybe you'd resonate with that from what I heard so far, Ryan. But it just becomes this thing that, it's going to be hard sometimes. And there's going to be fire swamps and rodents of unusual size, like in Princess Bride. But it's a journey. And the quote by Marianne Williamson, as much as I've known it for over 20 years, I have to paraphrase it, is she said, "There's no single effort more with greater potential for transforming the world than a transformation of the way we parent our kids." Paraphrase, but that's the idea. And it's a lofty thing. It sounds very self-important, but I can't think of better work. I can't think of anything that would be better to do.
Maybe you have an answer to this. If you were to go back in time, maybe there's another name that would be more fitting and more, I don't know. Is there something?
I don't know. I'm kind of
Okay.
married to it at this point. Like
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
just used to it and used to spelling it out, like spelling out my name sometimes. No, it's a good question. I haven't thought about it, but I have a book coming out called The Calm and Connected Parent, and I have a social media person because I've never paid a ton of attention to social media. We have a nice size Facebook group, and the YouTube channel is doing well, and I'm proud of that. But one of the first things Temi said when she came on board is like, you need a shorter thing for your and so the Instagram now just says Calm and Connected Parent. I'm like, okay. So, maybe something like that. Obvious book plug there, but maybe something like that. Like, what's our goal? To be calm and to be connected and not let our stuff spill out and affect our kids too much.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to talk about the book, and if all goes according to plan, this will be released the day before the book comes out on November 18th. Cool. So who is the book for?
I, like a lot of people that do coaching or therapy things, I've been told for the good part of 20 years, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. And at first I'm like, Dr. Neufeld wrote the book. Because I was so deeply influenced by him. He took me under his wing when my son was like 1 year old, made me one of the first trainees in his program. I taught at the Neufeld Institute for a while, teaching other therapists how to do the work. And I loved his paradigm so much that for a while, I just thought, I'm not going to write Hold On to Your Kids again. Like, what's the point of that? I would just be changing terms or something. But 20 years and having something, 2,000, 2,500 clients, doing webinars, doing conferences, all the relationships and all the learning, I just found like I started to have more and more and more that I knew I could share from my experience that wasn't just from my teachers. And still, I didn't want to write it down because I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist. That doesn't feel right. But boy, can I not write down something and be happy with it. If that makes any sense. I'm like, no, I could say that better. And that's not exactly the nuance. And there was just something in the last couple years that there was these growing things that I was getting from parents about social media, about screens, getting the question all the time. I feel like my kid is addicted to screens. What do I do about it? And then now AI, which is so incredibly hopeful and has so many potentially great things it could do for the world. And I see also as a threat to some connection issues and developmental issues. Just like any technology, it could be used for good, it could be used for bad. I started getting a lot more phone calls and having Zoom sessions with our groups and hearing parents say, I found out my 12-year-old has been consulting ChatGPT to get advice. So I didn't write a book that was about technology. I didn't. I wrote a book that essentially was like, hey, parenting a child and raising children has never been easy. Raising children who thrive in life and have the capacities and the skills and the maturities inside of them and that secure base of feeling connected in the way that John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth talked about, the developmental attachment psychologists. That's never been easy, but there's unique things happening right now. There's unique context happening right now that is maybe making it a little more scary, a little bit more confusing, a little bit more overwhelming. And I was seeing a trend line with the parents who come to me. And I work with anybody, and I try to make different pathways of resources available to people depending on where they are in life. But a lot of the people who come to me are doing well in life. They're high-achieving couples. They might both be working, or maybe one's working and the other one's staying home for now. They live in really nice areas. They give their kids everything. And because a lot of times they didn't have anything and they want to give their kids everything, and yet they're still having these problems of kids not listening or cooperating or fighting with each other or a lot of times really worrying about looking at their kids and going, I'm afraid they're not going to do well. I'm afraid that they don't have the mechanisms inside. And sometimes I'm afraid they're spoiled. And seeing parents fighting over that. Usually mothers saying the kid needs more connection, and the father saying they're being spoiled. They need more boundaries and discipline. And just seeing that even this population of parents that were doing well in life and trying to, in a great way, trying to provide for their kids, were really, really worried that they're screwing up their kids and having marriages that weren't working because they're fighting about it. I know that's a lot, Ryan, but it just finally came to a place where I was just like, okay, I think I want to write something down, and I think I know the outcome I'm looking for. And the outcome wasn't a compilation of tips and tricks to memorize and apply to all of your kids. You have 5 siblings?
Yes.
Yeah. Like anybody who has multiple kids knows that they're all different. And if you try to apply one roadmap to any of them, it's not going to go well. They're different. So I was more going for, yes, I'm going to give you practical stuff in here that I think will work and that in my experience works, but I'm going to try more than anything to help you be who your child needs you to be, which was something that Neufeld inspired. He said, parenting is more about who you are to your children than what you do. And so I was really trying to go with that. Not everybody can work with me. We can't work with everybody. Not everybody responds to an app or a YouTube video. But maybe I can create a book where people can feel like a guide is walking with them through these different things they're feeling and help them understand them differently and maybe try some things differently and maybe get some different experiences.
So you said a lot of really great things that raised a lot of questions for me. And I think one of them is that, we're hearing, AI is already sort of integrated with a lot of our lives, like at the snap of a finger, right? And so there are these concerns with this new technology. And so what, there's sort of a reading between the lines. There's an implication, at least in my listening, that attachment is going to be, or the way that we're attached to our children is going to be extremely vital to their experience with this.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. And again, I always want to come from a place of not sounding like I'm demonizing technology because it's a tool. And I grew up in Silicon Valley. I grew up in San Jose, California when everything blew up, and I was on a documentary about kids and computers in America when I was like 12, 13. I was on a video game TV show. Don't look it up. When I was like 13 years old, my nephews, Camo and Tyler, found it on the internet and taunt me with it every time I see them. They're like, "Hey, Uncle Todd, how about Starcade?" But now I just edit that out. No,
we won't put that link in the show notes.
Yeah, I had a great velour zip up. It was wonderful. But so it's not about demonizing technology. It's just practically understand that the most important, powerful thing is that parents, you and your partner, stay in the alpha position. You stay in the big papa bear position, the mama bear position. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. That doesn't mean you have to do everything right. It just means you have to have kind of the attitude of, I don't know what I'm doing all the time, but I know more than you, and my job is to take care of you, and here we go. Like a mother goose, doesn't like get behind the goslings and try to, herd them. The mother goose just goes, right? It's like, here we go. And that's the energy, right? And because life is overwhelming sometimes, because we're confused, because we have too much on our plate, because sometimes we don't understand how important that relationship is and that position is. I work with a lot of parents that are trying to be like best friends with their kids, right? And that comes from a wonderful place. Hey, let's be democratic. Let's be let's be nice, right? I get that. Awesome. But when you're not in the lead, if you're not in that position, the children will fill that position themselves, or they'll fill it with something else. Yes. Some people are listening and some people are watching this, and I'm doing a thing with my hands where I'm putting like the leadership position in the upper hand and the following position or the being taken care of position in the lower hand. But Neufeld brilliantly articulated in his book that we were too often leaving a vacuum of attachment. We were not taking the proper leadership position And when we're not taking the proper leadership position, children will actually start bossing us around, or they'll start bossing their siblings around. You and I are both oldest children. Oldest children tend to be alpha types. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean that we're the bossy, shut up dictators. It just means almost every therapist I know is like an alpha type who wants to take care of people, you know? And I certainly was in the position to take care of my little brother and my little sister. So, 5 of them. But getting back to your question, Neufeld's hypothesis and what he was trying to say at the time was, hey, we're leaving a leadership vacuum, an attachment vacuum, and that gets filled by peer orientation. It gets filled like the book and the movie Lord of the Flies with other kids. I love kids. Kids are great. I'm so incredibly grateful for my son's friends he had growing up. Just an outstanding group of children. You just go, oh, hope for the future. Look at these amazing kids, you know? But immature people can't raise immature people. Like kids can't raise adults. You know what I mean? So getting, again, back to your question, because I'm feeling extremely long-winded this morning, is technology becomes another thing that fills that vacuum, right? Like even look, I tell people sometimes, like I go to my favorite pub, a Russian River Brewing Company here in Santa Rosa, California, some of the best beer in America. A little plug for them. Maybe I'll get a free beer. I've walked in there sometimes and I'm not telling you I'm above it. I'm not. But I've gone in there sometimes and sat at the bar and every single person, not all the time, guys, go down there. It's a fun place where people actually talk to each other. But I've gone down there a few times and everybody was on their phone at the same time. You know, and I shouldn't have called them out. But, and again, it's not unique to them. It's just sometimes it's hard to turn to Ryan, who's sitting next to me, who I don't know. And maybe, like, what if you were sitting next to me because you just happened to be in town? How much could you and I talk about and figure out like we are now, right? But what if I didn't even turn to you and talk to you because I was on my phone, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the point in a very long roundabout way, is technology is very tempting. Because like ChatGPT, I love the tool. I use it for certain things that help my life enormously, but it'll tell you whatever you want too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's been some very bad stories in the news about that. But that's tempting because if I turn to you, Ryan, and I just try to be friendly to you, you might not want to talk to me. Or you might tell me I'm like somebody not interested in having a conversation or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's vulnerable.
Sure.
But it's not vulnerable to go to technology or faceless internet groups and stuff. So that's the point. Not that technology is evil. It's just that it is very tempting and it's very low vulnerability. And if I'm turning to that constantly, I might not be getting the nourishment of human interaction that I need. And then it goes into a whole nother thing that maybe we'll touch on, but about those capacities and skills I need to learn. Like, I need to learn to feel the futility of frustration in conversation, meaning I need to be able to go to my partner and talk about a tough thing and us to be able to feel like it's going to be okay and we can talk through it even if it's difficult. I need to be able to process crappy things that happen in my life and I need to process them and get them out, maybe have a good cry about it, right? And then so with technology, it's like, is technology serving that or is technology helping me avoid that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's the kind of thing that I'm just thinking about from a developmental point of view when it comes to it.
Yeah. You know, I bring this up because I think it might be helpful. But one of the things that I think about is, you know, my dad, it's funny because it's one of those situations. It's like a movie. We were so similar that we could not reconcile anything from the time I was about 13 to 22, right? Now, I mean, we're closer than we ever have been. But what I really look back and see when I put myself in his shoes was someone who just did not know how to connect with his son. You know, and he was, and I look back and things were frustrating for him. He didn't understand, you know, and so I think, I don't know, that's helpful to me to understand that and to be like, okay, it's important to me, you know, to sort of use this language to remain connected to, you know, my children over time.
Absolutely. And I certainly had that kind of father myself. He passed away a few years ago and he did not know how to connect to us. And he was not on speaking terms with two of his children when he passed away, and barely with me. And I was trying very hard because I knew he was dying, and I really wanted to not let him be by himself. And, a really helpful concept that I learned from Stan Tatkin, who's a brilliant human being and couples therapist. He has the psychobiological approach to couples therapy. I was lucky enough to train with Stan for many years. And I don't know if this is his original idea, but he talked a lot about couples saying there's a conflict mentality and there's a deficit mentality. And the conflict mentality is my partner, let's just say, is not meeting my needs right now on purpose because they don't want to. And if that's the thought in my head, I'm going to be antagonistic with that person. That's just how we are, right? If I think she's doing something to me on purpose or she's not doing something that I need on purpose, I'm going to be like, who the hell are you not to meet my, and that's just how we're wired. I don't care if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of training and experience. And I'm lucky enough to work with two of the most brilliant couples counselors in the world, Sue Johnson and Stan Tatkin, Rebecca Jorgensen. And I still can have that feeling on any given day come up in me, like, who, but that's and that applies to parenting too. Or that could apply to thinking about our parents. Like you're saying, I could be like, how dare my father not be this for me? Or how dare my child tell me they hate me right now because they're frustrated, right? But when we have the other mentality of deficit mentality is they don't know how to. My dad didn't know how to. And maybe we didn't mean to turn this into a personal therapy session where we talk to our dad, but my dad didn't know how to. In fact, I haven't shared this with a lot of people. I've shared it with a few, but my dad mumbled under his breath in a rare moment of not being angry or something not long before he died. And he just kind of mumbled under his breath, everything always has to be so hard. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's his operating system. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else the same way as it does to me as his child, but he went through life thinking everything has to be hard. And he didn't have the nourishment and the connection he needed with his parents. And so he didn't know how to give it. Now, that doesn't mean any of us can't be upset or have feelings about, hey, I didn't get what I needed. And you can have feelings about that. That's okay. But if we understand that our partners, like us, just don't know how to do some things because we weren't taught them, we can have an entirely different mindset about it and be like, oh, she just doesn't know this, just like I don't know some things. Hey, let's have a dialogue where we can figure this out. I want us to be able to talk to each other this way. I want us to be able to meet each other's needs. I want to meet yours. I want you to meet mine. I want us to both be happy. Let's figure it out. That is a super constructive place to be, right?
Yeah.
But then turning it back to parenting, almost everything about your child's behavior that you don't like. How old are yours, Ryan? 2?
2.5, yeah.
2.5, right? So that's just about where behavior's relevant. Before 2.5, it's just all instinct, all what's going on around them. It's not really this thought out anything, right?
Yeah.
They can start to be a little bit more into some behavior realms, 2.5 and 3.5. And there's some huge things happening at that phase that we could talk about. But almost everything that's going on for your child is they don't know how to yet. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to know how to feel my feelings and express them articulately, so I'm going to yell and scream at my father when I'm, They don't, I make those jokes all the time, but almost everything about your kid that is frustrating you is a normal, natural, developmental outcome of how old they are, how developed their brain is, how sensitive that particular child is. And even with twins like you have, they're different. They have a different temperament. They're going to have a different sensitivity, and also a result of what's going on around them. And when we get that, we go, okay, my job is not to get mad at them for what they don't know how to do. My job is to be a good guide for them and help them figure it out and help create an environment around them that is conducive to them feeling connected and to good behavior that works out for everybody. Don't even remember what the question was anymore, but
I don't either. So no, that was beautiful. And I do have, I have several questions here that we'll get to in just a minute here. So just to slightly change the place of our discussion, there's a lot of stuff that I just want to come up now. and this must be the therapist in you, Todd. I just feel like I just a bunch of stuff I just want to share,
Let's go. Let's
But
go.
well, I'll share one thing is that one thing everybody told me, they're like, you're not going to realize it. You're just going to realize that you're your dad, and you're going to have to deal with that when you're a parent. And it's strange because what I think about that a lot, and I'm like, I don't really. I mean, my dad sort of prioritized work over everything, and I do that a little bit, but I catch myself, and and what I really see is my grandfather, who, God love him. He was, I think when he passed, he was like 40 years in AA, and he just was one of those. He was so social. He had like social, he had friends that he was going out with until COVID happened. And, and he had that ability to sit there and just make you feel like you were the center of the universe just by listening to you. And he would always, even when I was older, I remember when I was a teenager, he would just run his hands through your hair and like rub your head. And I always do that with the boys now. And I'm like, wow, that's like what I'm doing there. You know what I mean? Because my grandpa, he did have that ability just to relate to people, just at a deep, just like, and
yeah,
it's funny because there's also this mentality in my mind where I was like my grandma's favorite. And then my brother, who's just about 18 months younger, he was grandpa's favorite. And so I'm like, wow, I actually learned so much just from watching my grandpa, so I'm using that in fatherhood. Anyhow.
Yeah. I had a similar experience, and I love my mom. I love my dad, and they both had their own stuff, just like we all do. I didn't always agree with my mom. Didn't always see eye to eye, but she was also a single mom doing everything for 3 kids, and there's no end to my appreciation for that. But, between her busyness, my dad's anger, my dad not really being around that much, I could, in my late teens, early 20s, take a lot of time telling you, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, I should have, right? But then when I grew up, I came to appreciate them and see them as human beings, and get how lucky I am to, like, there's, I could point to the things I didn't have, but I can also point to, I grew up in San Jose, California, went to a really amazing high school where I met my current partner a while ago, and we're getting married soon. And I was safe, and I ended up having a career I love and a son that I love more than anything, and some great life experiences. But I look back and I go, I also had Nana, my mom's mom, who was just one of the most amazing human beings, one of the most loving human beings. I had Aunt Renee and Uncle Dick, who had a 55-year marriage and raised my cousins, Mike and Ed, and who were just outstanding human beings. Uncle Dick being this old, tough Marine, but also just very loving guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, I did actually have some models. And in a lot of time, I talk to parents about that all the time when I'm doing personal counseling and coaching. They'll tell me that they didn't have this and they didn't have that. And I go, I appreciate that and I get it. And that's important. But also, did you have people you looked up to also that were in your family or not in your family, or a neighbor or a friend or a fictional character sometimes? Or you saw Atticus Finch in, To Kill a Mockingbird, and you went, that's the kind of dad I want to be, or, And usually there's a map in there, but we didn't realize it. But yeah, of course you're going to be your dad in some ways, because half your DNA is that guy, right?
Right.
We have a cocktail party on our block every other week that some octogenarians who live down the street started during COVID, and it's really fun. And there's a guy who used to live in our house who's a reverend, and he brought his dad to the cocktail party last night. And the whole time I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys are so similar, but in a good way. Of course, we're genetically half of our parents, but also, I don't know how to say this, but also learning things and growing and figuring out things that they didn't figure out, having new experiences, creating new things are all part of what makes us us. And when sometimes people come to me and go, oh my God, I'm just like my dad because I work too much or this or that. Not exactly, what you're saying. I go, but yeah, there's not that many patterns human beings have anyway. Does that make sense? Like, just because you have some traits in common with your dad, it's like, yeah, but also there's like these 4 or 5 different plot lines people have, and
Right.
that different traits and different
I'm
ways
sure.
we respond to stresses. And if you do one that's similar to your dad or your mom or something, it's like, well, yeah, but we had an English teacher, an accelerated English in freshman year. We didn't have my fiance Trish and I had the same teacher, but different groups. And he said something that stuck with us both. He said, like, right in the beginning of class, he goes, there's only 5 or 6 different stories that are told.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's not true. What about this? And he's like, it's that one. What about this? It's that one. And we're like, that's frustrating, But in general, there's 5 or 6 different stories, And I hope that makes sense, Ryan.
Yeah, it does. So, I think it's just the fact that we're both coming from like a male experience here, One of the things that's mystified me, and that is, my partner has a 12-year-old daughter, and, seeing my partners over the years, sort of the interaction with their mothers, it seemed, I never understood it. There's a certain anxiety there. And I wonder, I guess I'm not sure what the question is, but is there a difference between like the dynamic between like a mother and
it's such a great question. Yeah. And I feel at this point, like, I don't feel arrogant, but I feel the confidence sometimes of doing something a long time over and over again, right? So in general, in my practice, you could not bring up a thing about parenting that I haven't heard 1,000 times, and I don't feel confident about, like, saying, try this, look at this, right? And again, it's just like if you have tens of thousands of reps on something, whatever it is, you get that confidence. When it comes to that question, I don't feel confident to respond. I feel like, yeah, it's true. I've noticed that myself. There is a unique, my partner and her sister and her mom have a thread on WhatsApp that they are always communicating with each other in a way I don't do. I didn't do with my dad, and seeing the relationships in her extended family. But yeah, there seems to be a unique aspect of like fathers and sons that, like, when my son became a teenager, I just had this feeling like up until then, I knew I was important. I knew I played a strong role. I knew I wasn't like lesser important than his mom. But a lot of my feeling was like, I want to make sure he has his mom. I want to make sure he has access to his mom. I want to make sure she like has the resources she needs because I know how important that relationship is. But when he became a teenager, I remember thinking, he's a boy. He needs me in a different way now. He needs, right? And for better or for worse, I just remember thinking about, I don't think of things as gender this, gender that much. I think of like masculine energy and feminine energy, and that we both have both. But I just started thinking, I want to be a good, positive, masculine role model, right? I want to, not be the negative masculine control or anger things. I want to be more the like regulate, the leadership, And yeah, of course, there's a different relationship between mothers and daughters, that there's this genetic, biological thing. A lot of times it can even be an adopted daughter that is unique and different. And there's, so much, I think, of being a teenager, whether it's a boy or a girl, that I think speaks to the core of your question or this exploration is individuation. We all have to, it's like a biological imperative that we individuate ourselves. And I thought of this when you talked about your teenage experience. I think about this with this question. And I think about it when I'm talking to somebody who has twins. Like, individuating yourself is one of the most critical psychological things, that I have a sense of who I am separate from you. But what that requires is this process, and Neufeld talks about it, biological terms, the orthogenetic process. And again, I hope I'm not getting too long-winded this morning.
No,
that
this is great.
The first stage of relationship is merger, okay, in the orthogenetic process. Meaning when you first get together with somebody, or parent and child early on, there's a merging. There's no you and I, there's us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that for bonding and stuff is a very important stage. And people love that when they fall in love. They're like, ooh, that feels great. But that's not psychologically the healthiest long term. It's just how it starts.
Yeah.
Then there's an individuation stage where I have to figure out, most noticeably when I'm a teenager, who am I? What do I think? Right? And that's not comfortable for parents because all of a sudden their kid is saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't feel the same way as you. And you're like, but I have good values and I was trying to teach you good things and you always like doing this thing, right? So it's very uncomfortable. But if you do it right and you stay attached to your kid and you keep your dignity and you allow them to feel their own individuality and figure out who they are, we get to hopefully that third stage, which is integration. And that is the healthiest human boundaries and psychology of if you and I are best friends, Ryan, there's a healthy Todd who can think his own thoughts and have his own feelings. There's a healthy Ryan who can think his own thoughts and have his own feelings. But there's also a we. There's a Ryan and I that feels like close but not merged. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's true for children and that's true for partners, and it's natural and it's healthy, and children will go through a stage when they're a couple years old and then when they're 5 or 6 and then in a really pronounced way when they're 9, and then it'll go away if you handle it properly, and then it comes back when they're teenagers. Again, it's a long way around to make a point, but I think when I hear those kind of questions, I'm thinking about individuation and how that has happened. And sometimes parents have a psychological drive not to let their children individuate, and that can create an unhealthy bond. So what I would say is as long as we can get to a place where there's a healthy me and a healthy you and a healthy us, that's the most important thing. And just speaking to the parent of 2.5-year-olds, is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's how I say it.
That is the developmental roots of this, is when they're 2.5 years old, and this is important for all parents, but when they're 2.5 years old, they have a sense of individuality that they did not have before, okay? They thought until now that they were one being with you and their mother. Does that make sense? Like, they'll get mad at you when they're 2 if if they are like my dream I had last night, and you're like, oh, what dream, honey? And they're like, you know? Or they just assume you know what they think because they don't have a sense of individuality. Yeah. 2.5 to 3.5, they start to get, oh, I'm my own person. I have my own thoughts, which is thrilling. And if you haven't had this yet, Ryan, you're gonna get it. My kid looked at me when he was 2.5 years old for the very first time and lied to me to my face in a really obvious way, just about something he was eating or something. And I hey, did you eat your peas? And he's like, yes. Oh my goodness, did I get triggered inside of me? I hope I didn't show it that much, but I got angry because my dear, beautiful, beloved child that I did everything for was looking at me like a psychopath and going, and I'm kidding, guys, I'm kidding. I said that once at a school and my son's kindergarten teacher was there years later. And she's like, Todd, maybe don't call preschoolers psychopaths. I was kidding, but it's exciting. They have no idea that you don't know. So they're like, do you know I'm lying? And that's not bad. They're just experimenting. But they also start to feel more alone than they did before. And so they need lots of hearing that they belong to you and you belong to them. And it makes them feel better, And that's where this stage starts of individuation. Can I let you individuate? Can I let it be clear, hey, you are you. You can have your own thoughts. You can have your own feelings, especially important with a twin. You are your own person. No, not especially, but important in a different way for a twin. But there is also a we. We belong to each other. We are a family. And that sense of attachment is really, really, really important. And if you don't have it, you see a lot of possessiveness. You see a lot of division.
Yeah. I think what you described there as far as like those stages of individuation going into integration, I think was what it was. That makes a whole lot of sense to me, especially in this context, because that describes perfectly kind of like the way I've worked through my relationship with my father. It was like we had this, okay, if that's who you're going to be, then, we're not going to have any part of this. And it took until, I just started asking him, what about this? What about, and, the poor guy had 6 kids and he's like, I don't remember that, Ryan. I'm sorry. I don't remember that. We talked about a lot of stuff and it just became a integration. So we could have conversations about things now where it's like, oh, wow, really? That's what you think about that? That surprises me.
That was one of the greatest blessings of the last couple of years of my dad's life. I got a lot of difficulty and stuff, but I also got these little tiny grains of insight and perspective. My Nana used to drop those like nuclear bombs. She would just like, yeah, this was happening when your mom was a little girl, or this, I saw this when your parents were divorcing. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, she would just drop these insights, but a lot of it was that way with my dad going, okay, I get your experience as a human being now.
Yeah.
But you can't see that when you're a kid and all you're doing is looking up and going, why aren't you this? Or why don't you do that?
Sure. Is individuation different for, I don't know, twins as opposed it is to a middle child, or is there anything that's significant about
I give my
those type of
brother
things?
endless jokes about being the middle child, and he's like 50 years old, and I'm like, it's like 50, 52, I guess, and 51, 52 now. And I'm like, you're still the middle child. And all those things are just silly. There's no necessary this or necessary that. And it's not like twins are all the way this or all the way that. The thing I think more about is the stage with twins that comes after belonging and loyalty. And this is true for all kids. My son was raised as a single child, but it can be true if you have siblings or if you don't. But the stage that comes after belonging and loyalty is completely different. It's no longer, do I belong? Can I be me and be us? It becomes, how am I special? And Neufeld articulates this really well in his book and in his teachings. It becomes a deeper thing. 3.5 to 4.5, I start to wonder, it's not that I want to be your favorite, even though the ego sometimes would be, like you said, grandpa's favorite, grandma's favorite, and that's grandma, that's grandpa. But it's not like I wouldn't like to be, hey, you're my favorite. Like part of your ego is like, yeah, if your dad said that to you. But I think even kids know that that's not exactly supposed to be that way. But they do want to know, how am I special? How am I different? And that's not just, what do you see about me, Dad, that's different than my brother or different than my sister? It's also different than Mom, right? That's a different relationship, but it's like, like my kid when he was 3.5 sometimes wouldn't let me talk to his mother. I'd come home and he'd be excited to see me, and I'd talk to him and I'd say, we're going to go for a walk, but let me talk to your mom really quick. And he would interrupt and not let us talk because he saw her being special to me as being a threat to our specialness. Does that make sense? So it's not just identifying things in your kids that are unique to them, not that they scored a goal, but that they had effort, that they have a unique eye for something or a unique passion for something, or they color with, like, they just use big colors that they love. Not that they perfectly colored within the lines, because then they'll feel pressure that they have to do that. But what is it about them that is special? And then what is it about you and I that is special? And that should be, each of your boys feels, Mommy and I are special for this way, and Daddy and I are special in this way. And that's not because they don't like my brother or they don't love each other. It's because I just need to know that there's something about me that's different. And so it's obvious. It's not like this, no, twins this or whatever, or kids being 18 months apart, like I think you and your younger brother. That's a similar thing. A lot of times parents, when they have 6 kids, they're like, okay, boys, okay, kids, whatever. And they address them as the lot. And that's okay sometimes, but sometimes individual specialness can be lost in that, right? And so that's what I think about, is more, how do I help make you feel special? And which doesn't necessarily take 12 hours. I had a teacher once in high school. Like, I don't know, this is the first story I think of. I was underachieving at the time. I was testing through the roof, but I was not really achieving in class. And I look back at it and go, I was upset because my parents divorced. I was trying to make them pay attention. I was on purpose not really doing great. I wasn't really doing my homework. But this teacher gave us a pop quiz and I failed it or something. And at the end of class, he calls me to the back of class. And I'll remember this the rest of my life. And, he just said, Sarner, what's this? I'm like, oh, I wasn't prepared. I didn't know you were going to give me a test. I was studying for economic, blah, 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 excuse. And he looks at me, and I had never had a teacher curse with me before. I thought they weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
And he's like, Sarner, don't bullshit me. I can see how smart you are. Seriously, I feel like tears welling up a little bit when I say this. Like, he's like, Sarner, I can see how smart you are. Don't bullshit me and don't bullshit yourself. You're a smart kid. Act like it. Now, Is that the most perfect thing? Would I say that way to my kid? I don't know. But boy, did I kick ass in that class after that.
Yeah.
And boy, did it spark something in me. But it's because he saw me, and maybe it's not the perfect example of special. I could actually say it's probably being known, which is a deeper level, but it's that kind of thing. I remember 40 years later, okay, but did grandma or uncle or whatever say to you, I'm so proud of you? Boy, the right person says that to you. And again, I'm sitting here Saturday morning early and I'm feeling like I could have tears about like identifying with that. So again, lost track of what the question was, but the individuation and stuff comes from secure attachment. Secure attachment comes from my parent recognizing these needs and meeting those needs so I can feel more deeply that I belong, that I'm special, that I'm loved, and that I'm known. And when I feel those things and those land in me, and that takes thousands of reps over time of a parent just trying to be good enough and just trying to be, then I feel secure and I do individuate. But individuation doesn't come from somebody telling me to individuate, which is kind of what's happening in culture more now. It's like, okay, be your own person and be independent, and you should be able to just get along with other people and whatever. That's not how attachment works. Attachment works, and you're going to see this a lot in the next couple years. When your boys are feeling deeply attached in the moment, they will want to go from you. They will want to go play. They will want to go explore. They'll want to go learn. It's because they feel connected that it allows the individuation. It's like the tether gets longer. I know you're going to be there when I get back, so I can go. That is healthy attachment. That's healthy individuation. But too often individuation is like, I'm not you, right?
Yeah.
And that's not healthy individuation. Healthy individuation is, I know I have you, so I know I can venture.
It's funny that you brought up the situation with the teacher, because I just had this conversation. It was like I'm on this text thing with all my brothers, and my brother is still friends with some of these teachers that we had in like elementary school or whatever. And this never bothered me before. He was like, oh, I'm going to with this teacher or whatnot. And he just happened to single me out for whatever reason. He goes, anything you want me to tell this particular teacher? And I was like, let me put this context. School for me was very discouraging, to say the least. And I literally felt like the welling, the emotionality. And I was like, yeah, tell her she's an asshole. And they're like, my brothers are like, what? Where'd that come from? And so I was trying to figure out where it was coming from. But I think before I just would have thought I said hi or whatever, but I'm concerned about, I don't want my boys to have that experience, is that for whatever reason, the only thing I can remember this teacher and all of the teachers that I had is that they were communicating something is wrong with you. And I don't think there's anything I can do to help you. So, and that was the message for me all throughout. And in college, I had a different experience, right? So thank goodness. But I just wonder, I can't believe, number one, and it was the 80s or whatnot. I can't believe that some of the things that the teachers would say to me. But, if one person would have made a comment like that to me, I think that it would have really sort of transformed that whole experience.
Absolutely. People remember those things.
What I'm interested in is like, what role can a parent play to sort of when they go to school? Because I feel terrified about, my boys going to school in this day and age. It's like,
and unfortunately, I have so much love and respect for teachers, and I've been helped by so many, and I can think back to so many that were good ones, and I can think back to ones and I go, wow, they were probably a lot younger than me, and they were having a human experience, but why the hell were you working with kids if you were so burnt out or you whatever? I haven't thought of this memory in a long time, and maybe it sounds silly, but it was a definitive thing. Like after my papa passed away, my papa was a barber, and I don't have a lot of hair now, but my papa was a barber in San Jose, and he would always cut my hair. And after he died, I stopped brushing my hair. Again, like some psychological thing, I guess, looking back, that seems obvious, but I just stopped brushing my hair that much. And one day, I guess I had, and I think I was in third grade, and the teacher wrote a note and stapled it and asked me to take it to the office. And being a curious little kid, I opened it like, because all it was stapled, right? And I opened it to look at it, and it said, "Look, he brushed his hair today." And I was like,
Wow.
oh my, I mean, that's not the
Yeah.
worst thing anybody's ever told anybody, but for like a kid in third grade, and this is my teacher, I'm like, she's making fun of me, you know? And I was so upset by that. But to answer your question, I can't account for what experience your children will have or what teachers they'll have. I considered myself to have won the lottery to have had my son be able to go to the school he went to and to have the primary teacher he had, because he went to a Waldorf school in Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, kind of California, called Summerfield. It's for me the school that I would have dreamed of going to. It's like on a big piece of land, and it has a working farm and a wildlife like area, and it's private, so it costs, but it didn't cost as much as a lot of other schools in Marin or in San Francisco. And he had the most amazing teacher, and they have the same teacher for 8 years. And his kindergarten teacher, Yelena, was just the one who I said psychopath in front of years later at San Francisco Waldorf. Anyway, I want to answer your question. I don't know, and I hope that you win the lottery and have those amazing kids like Saskia Patov was for my son for 8 years, because they have the same teacher. But the most important thing, and teachers know this, teachers sometimes don't like these movies about like Robin Williams being the teacher who's the perfect teacher who leads all the boys in Dead Poet Society. They know that that's not supposed to be their role. The number one person or people in their life is meant to be the parents. And if the parents are in the alpha position, and the parents are the ones meeting the needs, and the parents help the children to internalize that relationship even when they're apart, which is things that we teach, how to help them look forward to coming back together with us, how to help them feel connected to us, and when they're helping them feel connected to us when they're not with us, helping them feel connected in the right way to people when they're, with babysitters or teachers, that is a shield for your children that will protect them from the slings and arrows of normal human interaction and imperfection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had a horrible teacher with your kids, you pull them out of there. You try to do something about it if you can, and if you can't, you get a different situation if it's that bad. But in general, the normal slings and arrows of imperfect people being imperfect with us, your kids are protected from that emotionally and psychologically for the most part if they have a very strong bond with you and with your village and your extended cast of supporting players, friends, aunts, uncles, things, right? And that you form alliances and community and village like like winning the lottery. My son had these 5 families, including us, with little boys that they just got along so well, and all the parents got along so well. And it was just like this great village. They got along with all the other kids too, but they had this little, and having that cohort and having us in the right position, imperfectly trying to stay the leaders, I wouldn't have worried about some normal falling short.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. What you say is the alpha position, or that space where it's like the authority lives, right? Because what I got from my parents was what the teachers said was the ultimate judgment of me, and like I said, college was very different. And I remember just, it probably was a life changer too. I remember I made a deal with my dad, and that's another story, that I had to go and enroll in college if this other plan didn't work out. And I remember I forgot to request off work before the deadline. I had to tell my boss at the time, I got to go run and register for college real quick, and I go in there and I wish I knew this person's name, but they looked at me and they go, okay, you're applying here. What are you going to go? I was like, listen, my dad needs me to go to college, so I'm here to go to college. Can we do this really quick? And she goes, well, the ACT score that you have to have to get in here is a 19. And I was like, what are you telling me? She's like, well, I'm telling you got a 32. So why are you wanting to go to this school? And I was like, I had no idea what that meant. You know what I mean? And so, what I sort of heard there was, wow, you did really well on this test. And I had it in my mind. And then I had another teacher who just told me that, and these are like the 2 most positive things. She goes, oh my gosh, I've never met somebody who can explain to me what calculus does, but can't get the right answer because you won't take the time to write slow enough and you can't read your writing. She's like, all the mistakes. And I was like, looking at this, but those things did something as far as say,
absolutely.
You've got aptitude here. What are you doing?
I believe, like I said before, I don't think kids are the answer for kids. Kids are supposed to be kids. They're supposed to be able to play and learn and explore and grow, and they can't raise each other. We're supposed to raise them. But having said that, I had close friends that I met in high school. One of them passed away, but a couple of them are still dear friends. One of them's going to stand with me at my wedding in a few months from here. And I had those teachers too. I had those people like Mr. Crawford, who I mentioned before in high school, but then college professors that just did that and were the Robin Williams, Dead Poets Society, Captain, my captain. Like I had those people who said things like that to me, and it is ingrained, right, in your brain. It is part of you, in your heart. And, I was trained to administer a version of what is called the adult attachment interview, which was originated at UC Berkeley by Mary Main and Eric Hesse. Mary Main, an attachment pioneer, passed away in the last few years. I was taught to do a version of it with couples, a lightweight version of it with couples, to just kind of assess their attachment history and what they had and didn't have when they grew up. Not as like a judgment thing or there's a one-size-fits-all experience you were supposed to have, but just to get clues of where those deficits might be or where the really important things to you might be. And one of the questions, as taught to me by Rebecca Jorgensen and Sue Johnson and Stan Tatkin, was, who looked at you when you were a child and said something really special and meant just for you? Like, I am so proud of you, that you just felt. And oh my goodness, Ryan, like talking about the welling up of tears, I was taught to ask that question in a very mindful way that maybe I'm not demonstrating exactly right now for our purposes. But I am looking at you and I am ready for your experience and I am delivering it in such a way that is meant to evoke whatever memory you have. And boy, does it bring up stuff in people about what they got like that and what they didn't get like that. But almost always there is an experience like that. Mm-hmm. Even if it wasn't from their mom or it wasn't from their dad, it's in there, And even my dad, who was very, very tough, I found a card recently from when I graduated, I think with my bachelor's degree, and it said, "I'm so very proud of you." And I read this card and I'm like, I don't remember him ever saying that, but it meant a lot to me, Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are such important moments. My message to parents is just, it's really ideal if that's you. It's really ideal if you're the one providing those moments. Now, if they also get them from other people, amazing. Maybe the admissions person at that school had a unique perspective that your dad wouldn't have thought of or your mom wouldn't have thought of because their experience with the ACT and stuff. So God bless you if you can get those experiences from other people, from friends, right? But be that for your child. And if you have 2 kids and they're twins, if you have 3 kids, you have 1 kid, you have 7 kids, it doesn't take 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of trying to make a kid feel special. Sometimes it's at the light and they're in the back seat and you stop and they don't see it coming and you just look at them and you're like, do you know how incredibly proud I am to be your dad? They might remember that 30 years from now. They might remember that the rest of their life. That cost you no money and that cost you 10 seconds of time, And they might remember that. So it really is more the quality of attachment, understanding what the needs are and trying to meet those needs for being special, for being known, for being loved, and saying that in a way that is heartfelt, that you take your time and actually mean it, say it, but mean it, that will fill the cup, that fills the cup. And do it before your kid's cup is empty. That is one of the most important things. Get out ahead of it. Because if you wait until the cup is empty and they're really upset, it won't land, It won't land the same way. Get out ahead of it. Find a rhythm of providing that specialness to the different kids. So
yeah, I think that just looking back now, I mean, those 2 comments that college was different because of really, I might be able to think of a couple more, but those 2 things just was like, oh, well, I can, am I good at this? Or is that what you're telling me? Or I have potential to do good in this? I wrote that off, like kind of because everything was like, what are you, I had that one teacher was like, what are you doing in this class? And just kind of shook her head and walking away like, what? And I'm like, wow. But I think that there's something about just the emotional sort of tone that it set, it was like, what? You're sort of selling yourself short here. Why don't you're good at this. And I was like, oh, really? That began sort of a transformation there. So Todd,
one of those powerful human emotions is mirroring, right? Empathy, mirroring, and didn't mean to cut you off, but
that's all right.
Sometimes it's about the basics. When I reflect back to you who you are in a way that you feel it in the moment, and it's not like, hey, you're the best. And I go, yeah, I am the best. It's more like, I see this about you. I get this about you. And then it resonates in you and you go, yeah, that is me. That is one of the most powerful human experiences that we can ever have. It is huge, right? So even like when you have kids, your kids' age, it's like sometimes they're like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And if that is reflected on your face, that means so much. They're like, oh my God, Daddy knows that is the best feeling in the whole world. That's how I feel. That right there, right? But it's also for difficult emotions, It's like, I'm so frustrated with you right now, Daddy, and I'm mad at you. And you're like, I know, sometimes I'm the worst daddy. Sometimes I'm just really mean, aren't I? They're like, yes. And then all of a sudden they change and they're open because you reflected back how they were feeling. Empathy doesn't mean you agree. Empathy just means you're striving to understand how the person feels. But mirroring is, I'm mirroring back to you that you are so good at this, and look at these scores. You're better than this. You could ace this test. What are you doing? That is mirroring, and that is so powerful. And people get it so much when they're falling in love. People get it so much when they're a kid sometimes that we become like hooked on it, and we get very upset when it's not present. Right? So anyway, mirroring is a big, big, big thing, and maybe we'll talk for 2 hours some other time about that.
Yeah, I would really want to be mindful of your time. This has been a conversation just rich with wisdom, and it's been extremely helpful for me personally. So thank you for that.
Good. I really enjoy the conversation. I so love what you're doing, and the podcast is really great. And so I'm just grateful that you had me on.
Yeah, of course. I just, if a parent were listening today and, we're struggling, what might you suggest as one small sort of courageous change or step in the direction of enhancing that relationship, being more attached with their child, might you suggest?
There's so many things. On a practical day-to-day basis, I would say it might not be answering your question, but the first thing I think of is just invest more in getting that light on in your child first, getting into the relationship, not taking it for granted, and just practicing that. And you're going to notice it's hard sometimes, and you're going to notice that you feel like you don't have time, and you're going to feel like resentment, like, I'm a good parent. Well, you just kind of, do I have to get in your face and get your eyes first? But that is the best everyday practice I can tell you, for just almost like a meditation. Did I get connected with my child first? But maybe a little bit more to your question, and you can help me out if I don't get it, is you're going to feel bad almost every day about something that you don't feel you did correctly, or you're going to feel guilty. And that's normal. And the way I say it to my clients, whether they're parenting clients or couples clients, individual clients sometimes that struggle with guilt and am I screwing up my kid, or am I doing what my parents did? A voice is going to come out of your mouth that you're just like, oh my God, that was my dad, and I swore I'd never do that thing. Feeling a little guilty for a moment is okay. Feeling a little bit of shame for a moment because you didn't line up with who you want to be, a little bit of that is okay, because that's just your conscience. But I would say that moment is one of the most powerful moments you can learn to see in a different way. That moment has the seeds for transformation and growth. Because if you recognize, if I just keep beating myself up about this, that's not going to help me. It's not going to help my kid. I'm not going to be more present if I'm beating up on myself about being awful. If I see that moment and I go, okay, this is bringing up something that's a blind spot for me. It's showing me something. Dedicating yourself to figuring out that moment and figuring out what you could do better. Like, number one, tying it back to the thing I said first. If you ask yourself, okay, my kid is nothing but resistance right now, and I'm getting upset. If I stop and I pause and I go, did I actually connect with them first? Did I say hello? Did I get in their face in a friendly way and just get that sense of, here we are, we're here. You found me. I found you. If I didn't do that, it's almost 100% predictable that my kid will resist me. And so if I can pause and go, did I do that? Oh, shit, I didn't do that. Okay, time out, gather myself, get that. Those moments are the actual moments that build a secure relationship, that build good parenting. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah. All right.
It's not
100%.
these big moments that I can't address because I don't know what went into it and but it's those little moments where I notice I didn't do what I wanted to do. I felt it inside. And then I dedicated myself to, am I doing that a lot? Okay, that's the thing I'm going to work on right now. I'm going to not come home, and I'm not going to come back into relationship with my spouse or my kid without getting that first. Or, okay, I'm yelling. Did I get sleep? Am I dealing with the frustration in my life right now? Am I getting it off my chest? Am I talking to a friend or a therapist or journaling out all my awful feelings? Okay, I need to do that because I'm bringing that to my relationship with my kid, so I need to bring it somewhere else. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, Todd, where could people connect with you online?
The easiest thing is just transformativeparenting.com. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ryan, but
That's okay.
transformativeparenting.com has our socials, I guess. And it has a master class that's like a 20-minute introduction to our work, and it has a link now to the book. And the book, many years in the making. I'm hoping it helps people. I was trying to look for a solution that was under $20 that could kind of get people on this path.
Yeah.
It'll be on Amazon and things, November 18th, 2025. I'm proud of it. I think it's good. I think it accomplishes what I set out to do. And now I can go finish that father book that I've been working on even longer. And maybe that'll come out in the next century.
It's been an awesome conversation. I really, like I said, I got a lot out of it. So I wish you the best. I can't wait to read the book myself.
Oh, good. And I hope we get a chance to talk again sometime because I have attachment anxiety. I go, is this the last I'll talk to Ryan? I hope we get a chance to have a conversation sometimes, if not over a beer, because we're a little far from each other, and I don't know if you like beer. But I hope we get a chance to talk again, and thank you for what you do. It's I like what you're putting out there in the world, so thank you.
Thank you. And likewise, it's just it's incredible, insightful material. So thank you.